Hello. So today we're going to be going over a few different topics. We're not going to just be talking about one. It's been a while since I've done a live stream, so sorry about that. Lots of things have been happening. I'm still working on that one research video, but I'm back for this for today because again, it's been a while. We're going to be talking about Catholic schools. We're going to be talking about Novus Ordo and the three different ways the Novus Ordo can be done. And then we're also going to be talking about the Catholic understanding of sloth because it kind of plays into everything. So first things first, we're going to talk about Catholic schools. So Catholic schools are kind of in this weird phase right now where they are incredibly needed, right? Like our society is pushing a lot of different things that any reasonable person would absolutely reject. Don't send your kids to public school. They're going to be indoctrinated into a belief that is not Catholic whatsoever. However, the Catholic schools, depending on where you are, don't seem to be much better. There isn't a lot of, for a lot of people, they come up with the same problems that are very similar to certain parishes where there's an established focus, and that focus doesn't seem to be the faith. It seems to be something else. In this case, academics. So I'm not saying that good Catholic schools that have great academics is a problem. That's not what I'm saying. The problem appears to be from the standpoint of the faith, that the faith isn't pushed in a proper way. And I have a video where I go over the statistics where the statistics are very much wanting for anybody who grows up in Catholic schools. Because at the end of the day, the Catholic schools don't do that much better than public schools. Although it is statistically significant, it's not necessarily practically significant with what we would expect from our Catholic schools. So why am I bringing up this topic? So I'm bringing up this topic for a variety of reasons. The first one is my kids go to Catholic school. I'm not here to rant about Catholic schools or to necessarily give them all the praise in the world because they deserve both. Like some Catholic schools are phenomenal and great. Some Catholic schools are not. And you as the parent, if you or you as a future parent really need to take stock in the fact that you are and you should check out the Catholic schools around you as you like look to enlist your kids to be in there. The reason why is because if you don't, you may be sending them to something that's no better than what the public schools are, and on top of it, you're paying money for it. So you're sending your kid to a place that is giving giving the secular culture what it is. Like, I'm sorry, selling your kid the secular culture through indoctrination, but it's giving a Catholic name to it. It's kind of giving the logo of Catholic. Like that's exactly how you get a type of I went to Catholic school, but situation. They went to Catholic school, but they were poorly catechized. And then the catechism that they did get supported a particular viewpoint. Typically, almost suggested, like in a lot of my situations where I've had a conversation on this, they'll talk about mostly from a political angle. And so it seems that a lot of those people that do that, they have a political angle in which they promote. Like, for example, if your school talks about social justice, but doesn't quite understand how to talk about justice, right? Like there's, when you add a modifier to justice without explaining the root word, it becomes a problem. Social justice, by the way, is something that is in the Catholic lexicon. That is something that we have as a definition. And I suggest you to look it up to know exactly what the Catholic Church's understanding of it is. It may surprise you in a good way. But when it comes to Catholic schools, like there are some things that you should expect and shouldn't expect. So Catholic schools are very much still in the world, right? Like they are going to be influenced by things in the world. It is very rare for you to find like a 100% perfect Catholic school that is both great academically and adhering to the faith perfectly. That is going to be very, very, very rare to find. That's not to say Catholic schools aren't great. It's just don't have a perfectionist standard, because perfect does not exist in a lot of ways that people think it exists. That being said, there are definitely things that you should make sure that lines aren't crossed. And so, when it comes to being involved as a parent, for example, like our school does parent meetings, you very much want to make sure that you're part of those meetings, because it helps with activities that are happening within the school, and you're having influence in a positive way. Like, don't go there to necessarily control. Like, that's not the point. Like, it is the point to control, but it's not the point to you being in control, right? Like, make sure you show humility. Like, don't be domineering. That being said, about 20% of Catholic schools have Protestants or other religions in it. Or I'm sorry, 20% of students have come from non-Catholic families. And so sometimes you will have parents that are not Catholic and they give their opinion and they promote it. And then you're just like, yeah, that doesn't fly with Catholic teaching. And sometimes you have to be that guy that says it. And it sucks. Kind of sucks sometimes, but it has to happen, because if you don't say it, no one's going to correct them, and it's just going to go. And then that's not good. Depending on where you live, it can be a mixed bag like that. But like I said, it's only 20% of the parents. It's not 100%. It's not even 80%. But there are 80% of Catholics. The other thing I'd like to point out, which is, I think, very important, is the fact that 80% number is it's not 100% active in the faith. They may be active in school, but it's something that if you're going to take your kids to Catholic school, you have to recognize that not all the Catholic families practice the faith. Like, realistically, that's probably not happening. Now, there may be some cases where certain parishes where that is happening, where you just have a small sample of people doing it. But in most cases, it is not the case where all of the kids that claim to be Catholic are actually practicing, because their parents aren't taking them. And so there is very much a lukewarm aspect to the faith, where you will see basketball signups. People will sign up for basketball. And then you ask them, hey, are you going to mass? Like, which mass do you go to this weekend? And they're like, oh yeah, we don't usually go to mass. Like, we go like once a month, if that. But they're at every single basketball practice and basketball game. And so it's like a completely like misunderstanding. Like, it's a misunderstanding of values, of priorities. And so, like, this isn't, again, to trash Catholic schools. My kids go to Catholic schools. This is very much something where you, as a new parent or a parent looking at Catholic schools, you should have some mourning of this. This is a real thing. And so I am in the Archdiocese of Detroit, and I've seen a combination of a lot of great things and a lot of bad things, because we've looked at different parishes. We've looked at different Catholic schools as options for our kids. And so having 5 kids spaced, about 2 years apart, we go through a gambit of ages. And so it's not like we're ignorant of what's happening around us. We have friends who are teachers at other schools. We have friends who used to be teachers at other schools and now are stay-at-home moms, which is a great thing. The parishes seem to support her in her decision. At least they didn't try to guilt her or anything. So I've nothing but good things to say about the schools from that angle, but it's just from a standpoint of what to expect from other parents, right? Like, you want your kids to be in faithful, to have faithful friends, or like they're all learning at the same time. But the reality is, like, that's just simply not the case. And the parents have different priorities. And it's not to say, again, this is not to say the schools are terrible per se in that capacity, but it is another thing to say that the people who take their kids there don't matter, because they absolutely do. Because at the end of the day, you want to create an environment, you want to create a promotion of the faith in a way that as a community, everyone is moving towards God academically and spiritually. And so you're not like I said, your expectations aren't kind of shattered. Whereas like mine, like coming in, that was actually something that did fluster me for the first few years, because there were expectations that I had that were simply not there. And uh, looking back on it, it was silly for me to have those expectations. That being said, it doesn't mean you're a walking map for heresy or letting things slide or letting the teachers teach yoga to your kids. Like, don't deal with that crap. You call it out and you say, hey, like, this is not okay. Like, you shouldn't be watching like Kung Fu Panda, for example. The series, the TV series, because that's filled with a completely different religion and promotes that religion like as a forefront of that show. So I don't know if that's ever been a problem with you guys, but like, you definitely want to bring this up to whoever you need to, and it will get rectified if the principals and teachers are serious about the Catholic faith. If they aren't, well, you know that you should probably move somewhere else, because you don't want your kid being given poison. Because at the end of the day, that's not good. Like, you can't just deal with the fact that your kids are being taught something at an impressionable age, and you're just like, oh, well, that's okay because it's a Catholic school. It's not. It's just as bad as if they were in a public school being taught a different religion as well. So there's definitely, let's see, there's definitely Catholic schools known more for their sports programs than their Catholicism. Oh my gosh. So we have that and we don't have that. Like, we have that in a good way where they're like we have some high schools that are like phenomenal in both the spiritual and academic realm. But yeah, there's on the lower levels, like it is crazy how sports become such a thing. Okay. So like, you may like, just because they go to Catholic school, like that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's going to be like hunky-dory or friendly or try to bring everyone together. There is definitely some, it's not that it's animosity, but there is definitely this busyness that happens where everyone's being busy. Like the kids are in like 3 sports and in learning 2 instruments and swimming, learning how to swim. And you're like, okay, well, like, when are we going to have time for play dates or like being able to hang out or, something so like our kids can get to know each other more instead of just being in these organizations together. And so that is a very real problem. And I know that happens in public schools, but it seems to happen like, I'm just surprised that the private schools do that. But at the same time, when you think about it, like private schools, tend to have more money than public schools on average in terms of like the parents. So on some level, there's a inclination for that to happen. But it's important to recognize that fraternity or sorority for your kid is really important. And it's really important that it's not always tied to an organization. If it's always tied to an organization, you maybe have a socially awkward kid, but they don't know it and you don't know it because they get along with everybody in the organizations. But when they're outside of those organizations, they don't know how to interact with people. And so you've stifled their ability to grow in that capacity. And obviously, yeah, that's parenting advice, but it's good parenting advice. Like you don't want your kids just to know other kids in other organizations. You want them to have friendships that are outside of that as well. So let's see. The culture can definitely be light on the yeah, it can. Not the pandemic. Okay. Hey Matthew. Like your kid doesn't get hang out with anyone. Right. So like, yeah, like your kid doesn't get to hang out with anyone in their class unless they're in the same activities too. And so again, that creates a problem because like it's like you have to be tied to those organizations, and that's not good. It's not good for the kid. for them growing. Like you're basically like, okay, here's your friends at school. All right, let me just isolate you from them unless they're in these organizations. And it's like just really weird. Like, and then like when you think about the social effects, like growing up, like having that dynamic play out to its natural end. Okay, when they go to work, will they make friends at work, or will they only hang out with people at work and then never talk to them outside of work? And then build relationships from workspaces. Like that's really weird, and can lead to, you know, obviously socially awkward kids. But so yeah, there's that problem. So that being said, again, there are some great Catholic schools out there, and then there's a lot of, you know, in the middle, in between like bad Catholic schools and great Catholic schools. There is a lot in the middle, but you as the parent paying the tuition also have a voice. And if your voice isn't being heard, I mean, you're essentially paying them to take care of your kids and teach their kids for you. And so like, you know, because you do have the option to homeschool your kids. And if you're not in the position to homeschool your kids, the Catholic school ends up becoming both a daycare and a teacher, right? And so it's not wrong of you to say, I'm going to revoke that ability for you to teach my kid the crap you're teaching them, and I'm going to go somewhere else, or I'm going to start homeschooling. So like those are all really important, because at the end of the day, schools, whether public or private, are there doing a service for the parents, not the other way around. They're there to help teach your kids because you're unable to, given whatever situation you're in. Okay, I'm not passing any judgment here or there. Like I said, my kids go to private school. They'd go to public school if public schools weren't crazy in the situation that they're in. But the you know, when it comes to homeschooling, that's very much an option. And you know, don't think that you have to deal with the crap that you're being given, because on the impressionable age that your kids are at, it's essentially poison to them, right? Like they're going to grow up with that understanding, and it's going to poison their view on the world. And you don't want that, because they're impressionable, and you know, it is your responsibility as the first teacher of their lives to make sure that they're not being given that poison. So again, that being said, I'm not trying to end on a bad note for Catholic schools. It's just, it is hit or miss depending on where you are. There are some great Catholic schools that promote proper spirituality and orthodoxy, and really push kids to be their full selves in the fullest capacity that they have, both academically and spiritually. But then there's a lot of the stuff that we hear, right? Like that we experience and see. And so I'm not going to pretend like my eyes are lying, or that what I'm reading is wrong on a massive scale. It's just, that's the state of things right now. And it's going to take us parents to help move that in the opposite direction. And then, you know, there's this situation where I wanted to bring up share screen window. So share, where is it? Yeah, here we go. So the Diocese of Wichita. Okay, I just want to emphasize this because it's so freaking important. The Diocese of Wichita, our diocese schools, this is from the Catholic Diocese of Wichita, just a little bleep here. Our diocesan schools do not charge tuition. Okay, now given the crap that's being sold at public schools, I'd like to know why the bishops don't have a like concerted effort to get this as the model everywhere. Because our kids are being taught a completely different religion in public schools, and we really I mean, Catholic schools are expensive. You know, I pay quite a bit of money for my 3 kids to go to school there. Not all 5 of them are of age, so 3 of them go. But like that, you know, it's a lot of money, and it's not going to get cheaper. So I'd like to know how diocese can reflect, copy, make alternative versions of what's happening in Wichita, because that's amazing and that's needed right now. Like, we need that for a lot of reasons. And so I just wanted to bring that up and show some light to that, because it is really, really important. More than the mortgage every month. Yep, that's true. Oh my gosh, that is true. Yeah, that is unfortunately true. So the next thing I'd like to do is talk about. So I'll minimize that for a second, but I'd like to talk about a sung mass. So a sung mass is, well, actually, I've got something for you. So there are 3 forms that the Novus Ordo can take, and it's very similar to the traditional Latin Mass. I believe it is exactly the same designations, but I'm going to let, from my video with Dominic, let him explain what they are.
The difference between the 3 are. Can you say it again? So low Mass, everything's spoken. Sung Mass, sung using those degrees. You have to sing first degree before you can get to second and third. So there's still variation on what can be sung, but there are basic things that like have to be sung if you're doing the other stuff. And then solemn Mass, which would be the assistance of deacons, right, on top of a sung Mass.
Okay, so a sung Mass is like the middle Mass in between a high Mass and a low Mass in the Novus Ordo. And it does exist. And if you want to know how it exists, I suggest, like, how it is something that we can do, I guess. Please go to, I'm sorry, wrong one. Please go to why you as a Catholic should care about Gregorian chant and sacred music. And we go through it all. We explain, hey, this is how a low Mass is done. What he said, low Mass, sung Mass, high Mass, but also about Gregorian chant, how to bring that into the Novus Ordo in a way that isn't going to disrupt the flow of the congregation. Because unlike, how a lot of people think, they are just like, all right, everything's going to switch to Gregorian chant. That would be really bad, right? Like, that would be too much of a disruption. And so it's about easing in the congregation. And we talk about how to do that. We have shared this with a lot of music ministers or music directors. We've shared this with a lot of priests. In the comments section, we got a whole bunch of them commenting. On Twitter, same thing, a bunch of them commenting. It is, even though it's only gotten like 914 views, it's already been doing like amazing things. And so I'm advertising this for 2 reasons. One, I do think this should go out. It's really important that music directors and priests know what's available, what's been handed down to us, and to see it from a music director. Dominic's our music director at St. Basil. We've been slowly but surely minimizing the entrance hymn and bringing in an introit. And so we kind of go into that there. We also go into it in a different video, but it's really about promoting what the church has passed down to us and not losing it. So just to go back with Mark, nowadays to send a kid from K through 12 Catholic school is like 70,000. So no, it's a little bit higher than that. It's gotten really yeah. So yeah, the Diocese of Wichita, yeah, they did it in like 1984, 85. And I think the bishop came in and he was like, we are doing this. This is what we're doing right now. And he just came in and said, this is what we're doing. And yeah, delaying it does make it cost more money. But the longer you delay, the longer the negative effects happen, right? Like the more students we lose to the culture, like, because so many Catholic families cannot afford, just to backtrack a little bit, because I didn't see this comment, cannot afford private school. And so there's ways to have a reasonable solution as to how to get that, but it is going to take effort, and it is going to take some humility across the board when it comes to a lot of the parishes that have schools, because like it has to be centralized. And I know that for a lot of people, like that's a bad word. But there are certain stipulations that happen, and there are ways for protection for not just the laity, but the bishop as well, so that, you know, it goes back and forth. So don't think that that's like the only, like that's like you're screwed because it's centralized. There are protections that can happen, that can be put in place. So back to the Gregorian chant and sacred music, like it's really important that you do this, because we have a richness and tradition that does not seem to be captured anymore, right? Like we just don't have it in most masses. Like when you go to Reddit, and I know Reddit people don't like Reddit, but if you go to Reddit, there's real evangelization happening there. There's real people giving testimonies. I'm Anglican. I want to see a great Catholic mass that rivals what I've experienced in my Anglican parish. Where is that? Because all I see is Protestant, low Protestant stuff or whatever. And like you get comments like that all the time. And it's rightly, like that is a correct disposition. Like you should expect the richness of tradition from a church that claims to not be 500 years old, but 2,000 years old. And so that's what me and Dominic were trying to promote. That's what we are trying to promote. So if you're interested in seeing how this plays out, I suggest please watching this. If you want to see how a sung mass looks and feels to the best of the recording ability, here is our video here. And this is St. Basil's Assumption of Mary Mass. And it has everything is sung, everything, including the readings. The lectors, both male lectors, went up there and they sung the readings. And then Father Eric came over and sung the gospel. He did not sing the homily, although that would have been impressive if he did. So I wouldn't have clapped at that point. I would have waited until after the mass, because you shouldn't be clapping in mass. But that would have been really impressive if he did that. But still, if you've never seen a sung Novus Ordo, please watch this. I'm not doing this just for clicks. It's a really important thing. A lot of people have not seen a sung mass. And so let's see, I'll just try to, I think that should do it, right? So that's the link for the sung mass. And then I'll just put it all in one place. That's for the Gregorian chant. So okay, I think that's it. So all right, so now the last topic I wanted to talk about. So the last topic I wanted to talk about was the Catholic understanding of sloth. Okay, so what is the difference between the Catholic understanding of sloth and let me just switch that. The Catholic understanding of sloth and Protestant understanding of sloth. So the Protestant understanding of sloth seems to be that sloth is laziness. That's the equivalent thing. And so that seemed to have come out of Protestantism in the 1500s. I'm not just making this up. I tried to find the article that I read this in, and I couldn't find that specific article, but it was, I believe, well, if I find it, I'll text it. But they started describing how the understanding of sloth was changed after Protestants became a majority in the area of, wherever they lived. And then this ended up, like, it's almost like weird, because it ended up, well, I'll tell you in a second. But sloth is the neglect of duty towards God and yourself, right? Like, so it's not just your you being lazy. You can actually be too busy, and you are committing sloth, because you are focusing on things that are not what you should be focusing on, and you're distracting yourself from your duties. And so this actually can take on a lot of different forms. And so acedia is one of those forms where it's usually looked as sloth or apathy. What is it? I believe one of the translations for it can be neglect. And so it kind of points to what the issue is with sloth. But then there's also like the high noon demon. And so the high noon demon is referenced in the Bible, but it's the same feeling. It's just this kind of like depressed feeling of not wanting to do what you need to do. Yeah, doing much but accomplishing little. Because like, you know, if your priority is to, like, for example, say you're in charge of a YouTube's, you know, whatever, and you're promoting YouTube videos, but like you're not teaching your son what your son needs to know as he's growing up. Like, even though you're promoting Catholicism on YouTube, well, your son is your priority and you're neglecting your duty. And so it's kind of weird when you think about it, because like when you think about the Protestant work ethic, it's like, okay, well, like, how often is that sloth? Like, how often does that actually go into that? And, you know, that's a serious question, because depending on what time frame you're looking at, like, it's almost been normalized that you work, and you neglect your family, or you neglect particular parts of your family that are important and that you as a father or mother should not neglect. And so I'm not doing a necessarily a huge brush, but given what, you know, especially on certain conservative outlets, how they promote and will outright say from their CEOs about like the Protestant work ethic, well, like, you know, sin's worse, you know, like sin's a problem. If by Protestant work ethic you mean to sacrifice time with your family for your job. Okay, like there is a balance that needs to happen, and finding that balance is key, and that's something that I prioritize in my family, which is why I'll do these in the middle of the night, because I make sure that I am there for my kids when they're awake, and my wife is there enough that she's able to comment on and give hassle me while I'm in the middle of these live streams. So so it's not a matter of like looking at me. I'm just using myself as a quick example. I'm not a paragon of virtue by any means, like that. But when it comes to examples of sloth and the opposite of you know, oh my gosh, I can't say this word. Magnanimity. Oh my gosh, that's embarrassing. All right, so I can't say that, but it means to be greatly sold. I gotta go look that up now. There it is. Okay, well, all right. So I'm doing St. Michael's. I'm doing St. Michael's Lent, and so they brought the word up today, and it's like greater soul or something. And the definition on YouTube is just, or I'm sorry, on Google is just simply not the same. And so I'm not going to use it because I don't want to give you the wrong impression. But it's the idea of like your virtue is, you know, you're about making sure that you have a good balance and you are focused on what you need to do and what is due towards God. And so both are really important, and you want to, you know, overlap both in a good way. That being said, you know, that kind of goes back to Catholic schools, right? Like making your kid be really busy is a problem, because then they equate being busy with being productive, which is a very utilitarian understanding of being a good working person, because that's not the definition. Being busy and filling your time with a whole bunch of different things does not mean that you're effectively working out what you should be doing as a person and towards God. And so like that's a really important thing. Now, don't get me wrong, like I am not a theologian. If you want to look up sloth, I suggest, you know, as a definition, look up, go to Sloth for Catholic Answers. They have a great few articles on it. But this is also something that should be known. It's one of the 7 deadly sins. Every Catholic should know what sloth is. Like, this is not a complicated thing. So if someone's going to like be like, oh, you said you're never going to do theology. It's like, I'm never going to do theology. You don't teach at OCIA. Okay. Because 7 deadly sins is something OCIA should probably cover. Like, it's not that complicated. But when it, let's see, sorry, I just want to look at the, That is the word. There it is. I'm not going to say it, but Cat Lady is totally helping me out. So, but yeah, so it's this understanding of sloth being promoted in schools. It should happen. Like the 7 deadly sins should be known to the students, but also should be known to the parents, so they don't practice sloth instead of the virtues. And then on top of that, you have the masses. So there's a certain combination of things where like a low mass is low mass, sung mass, and high mass, and there's reasons for them all, and hopefully they're not done because of sloth. Hopefully, I'm not saying that is the reason, but that ties in there as well, potentially. I'm not saying it happens 100% of the time. I'm not going to throw all the priests and bishops in the world underneath that bus. That is not what I'm saying, but it is something that sloth can come around, especially when we have a priest shortage, when we have a crisis of priests right now, and they are busy, but they're busy with duties that they are supposed to be doing. However, that can still lead to distractions. And so there is that potential, and that's all I'm bringing about. I'm not saying they will absolutely do sloth. That's not what I'm saying. But there is a potential for that to happen given the circumstances that we're in. And that's why we need to help our priests, which is why we're going to help our priests with some of the gardening situation that my wife just notified me like 10 minutes before this video. But let's see. Let's see. Having your worth associated with how much you can do wrecks a person's mental health when they aren't capable of doing much too. So yes, we see this happen when people get disabled. So say you're a construction worker, right? And you put everything into being a construction worker, too much. And you get disabled for some reason. Like maybe it's just temporarily disabled. Maybe it's permanently disabled. Either one, like there is an inclination of, or there's an inclination that you may feel inadequate because you're not doing that job anymore. You're not being productive in a way that to you've created a formula for yourself on being productive in a way that is not geared towards God, but is geared towards utilitarianism. And so that is something that, especially in America, that we have to be careful for, because we have a tendency, like we have this amazing material wealth, like just compared to the rest of the world, we have amazing material wealth, and we have an increased probability of looking at that wealth and taking it for granted and abusing it and making it an idol. And so like we really do need to like bring like we need to focus more as a culture within the Catholic Church as the Latin Rite, to not focus so much on materialism and to rightly call out fellows that are too focused on that materialism, that lead to that utilitarian mindset that promotes a hyper like Protestant work ethic that America is known for. And the only reason why I'm bringing up Protestant work ethic is because it is a known thing. Like it's something that like people beat their chest at, which by itself is a problem if you really think about it. But like it is something that is touted quite a bit. And so the Protestant work ethic is not ideal. And there are many families, there are many sons and daughters that have had negative effects from such a system. Not to mention the potential for abuse by employers of those systems, where even though you may like move forward, the money due to those people who are working and making it even possible may not actually get their due for what's going on. and that's a bit complicated. I'm not trying to get into contract theory and what you agree to get paid for and whatever. I'm not necessarily going into that route, but it's the expectation that your workers should sacrifice above what's expected of them at the point that they sign the contract. That's a problem. And so that being said, not to get into that, that's kind of all I wanted to say today. It is kind of tight. I am trying to figure out what to do in terms of having someone else on, because I'd like to have a discussion. I don't necessarily like just talking to a camera by myself. I like talking with people, and all three of these topics are something that I think would have been interesting to do with someone else. And so I am currently in the process of also looking for someone who's willing to like do that, have a conversation. For those videos that I'm not focused on research or showing statistics or what have you, looking for someone to either argue with, debate with, whatever. So like I'm in the process of doing that. And so if you could pray for me, because I want this to be effective. I don't want this to be something where I'm just doing it for money. I want this to be something where it's effective and I'm helping the Catholic Church in a substantial way. I want the richness of the faith to be brought back to most of what people go to Mass for in, which is the Novus Ordo. I want people to understand like the heritage that we have. That many of the things that were dropped because of the spirit of Vatican II or some of the implementations of Vatican II, that we get them back. There's nothing wrong with saying how we implemented something is probably not the best, because see the fruits of it, like that's pretty bad. It's about writing the course when you can, right? And so in this case, we're trying to bring back the richness of 1800 years of music, and not just things from the 1970s. And so, again, don't reject Vatican II. Don't do that. But stay in line with Vatican II and promote things that Vatican II, that isn't against what Vatican II states. So, but if there's, let's see, I'm just trying to see if there's anything else in the comments. Let's see, all right, let's see. There are so many instances of rest mentioned in the Bible. It's hard to imagine it's not important. Right. Like, so like we're supposed to, yeah, we're supposed to rest on Sunday. Like that, it's at the very beginning and then, later. So it's kind of important. If God rests, like, are we supposed to rest? Probably. So, okay. So it doesn't seem like any other comments are coming in, but, thanks for watching and thanks for listening to my rambles. If you want to leave a comment, leave it down below. There are, I'm going to link the videos that I referenced, and yeah, like the definition for a high mass and where he cites it, we have those linked to that video. So I'm not going to link those documents, but I will link those videos so that you have it. It's easier to get to. So again, thanks for watching and have a great night.